My vision for this program is very simple. Okay, we are going to build the premier football program in the country. Okay, we are not going to talk about it anymore. We are going to be about it.
There we go. Took us a second to come up, but we're here now. Howdy, and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. My name is Will Stone. I am joined today by one of the Whittier Ags on Twitter, Good Bull Hunting's Robert Behrens. Robert, thanks for coming back on.
Absolutely, man. Good to be back. Good to be talking some Aggie football again.
Yeah, we were talking before we got on, and I feel like it always kind of hits that malaise around February and March, and there's just not a lot going on football wise. Basketball and baseball are picking up, and especially with this spring being a little more locked down in terms of media access and things like that. Just wasn't a lot to really talk about or get into, but we've had the spring game. There's transfers going out. There's transfers coming in. There's a lot more going on, but I guess before we get into some specifics, we haven't recorded a podcast in 3 months. So a few things have happened, that may change how people feel about this Aggie football team. But I guess where are you at today, maybe compared to, a few months ago in terms of Elko and the coaching staff and the team and all that kind of stuff? Just kind of a broad status update on how you're feeling.
Well, I mean, for me, one of the biggest things, if we're looking at kind of the entirety of what's going on this year, is just what A&M has done in the portal. Not even talking about what's going on right now, but just what we saw go on there back in December and January. Because, throughout that coaching transition, as you'd expect, you saw a lot of guys going out the door, a lot of names that everybody knew going out the door. But the way that they have backfilled this roster, and really, really, I think in the biggest way is just addressing some really critical needs, both at a receiver, at linebacker, but more than anything in the secondary. That gives me a lot more confidence, at least in the short term, because I think we all were hopeful that Elko would be able to build something and get this program going in the right direction over the long haul. But back in mid-December, it was very unclear what 2024 was going to look like. And while it's still only April and a lot of those question marks still exist, I do think that what they've done in the portal has given us a lot more reason for optimism and reason to believe that if a few of these key transfers work out, that this team could be really good really fast.
Yeah, and I agree 1,000% about the secondary. You go back to the Texas Bowl where we had some true freshmen and some walk-ons out there in the secondary, and going up against some 4th and 5th year guys for Oklahoma State, and these big physical receivers, and it was tough. And you're like, okay, and a few weeks later we got a commitment from Will Lee from Kansas State at corner. I'm like, that's a great start. We need about 6 more guys in our secondary. Yeah. and they went out and they did just that. They got it wasn't just numbers. It seems like it's been quality and quantity. And you saw a lot of those guys getting a ton of reps in the spring game, and still some guys like a Javon Thomas or Bravion Rogers that have been around for a while, or that were freshmen last year and have stuck around. So that position specifically has done a complete 180 from where it was a few months ago. And credit in this day and age of what college football is right now, you're allowed to do that. It didn't take 3 and 4 years to rebuild a program anymore. You can kind of, use the portal, maybe get some high quality freshmen in, and have a good year in year one, which I think we'll see. We'll get into maybe some of that later about our expectations and whatnot. But I think the overall feeling of the team is a little more positive, at least on my end. I think back to Thanksgiving when with Stoops Gate and the loss to LSU, and I'm like, this is just a horrible day. and and even like landing Elko, I'm like, okay, like this is fine. Like like, this will probably be okay. And admittedly, I was and still am a pretty big fan of Jed Fish, but where we're at now, knowing what we know, I don't think I would trade Elko for him. I think the way that Elko is, like, you listen to him talk and what he's been able to do, and like just from an organizational standpoint, roster management, all that sort of stuff. Just he just seems like a very intelligent guy and a smart football coach, and I'm excited, as we always are, to see it play out on the field. But yeah, like you said it before we got on, it's still what, 4 more months until Notre Dame. It's still like
Yeah.
it's over 100 days. I know that.
Yeah. Well, and I think with Elko, even though he had been here for what was it, 4 years as defensive coordinator, but I feel like just because the media availability was always so sparse, like we didn't really get to know him and his personality and his style all that much, even though he
Oh
was
yeah,
in Aggieland for years. So if you were just a fan, you didn't even see that much of him. And so getting to see a lot more of him and hear from him in interviews and media availability, I mean, it does strike you that even though he seems like a very like no nonsense type of guy, um, he's not like old school necessarily. He's in his
no,
40s. He's in his 40s. He's only been a head coach for 2 years, so he's not one of these guys that's like stuck in his ways and is refusing to adapt. He is very much, wanting to take advantage of NIL, take advantage of the portal.
Yeah.
You've seen the staff that he's built on the football side, bringing in folks who are like basically a GM and having a actual scouting department.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
he's done a good job.
He's got a high school coach, a high school scout, and a college scouting team. Like he's got everything covered there.
Yeah, so I think he realizes the need for those things in the modern game of college football, because it's not, to quote Jimbo, it ain't going to be the way it used to be. That it's not just like a recruit a guy out of high school for a year and a half and then he's yours and that's your roster. It's recruit guys out of high school, but also you never know how long they're going to stick around, and so you always you don't need to pass up the opportunity to improve your roster anytime you can. And the portal is now, it's like, do I think A&M's going to be hitting the portal this hard every single year? I don't think they will, and I hope they don't.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is more like a short-term Band-Aid to address some of the issues that this roster had. Primarily because of portal departures, but also I think just there were some flaws in just roster construction in general. But even going forward, the portal is still a way to be a good to great team and then bring in a handful of impact players and basically fill whatever weaknesses you have to essentially make it to where there's no reason, once you get to that elite level, there's shouldn't be rebuilding years anymore.
Right.
Because whatever your weaknesses are, you can just go fill in the portal and keep on chugging.
Well, and in tandem with that is the high school part still. Like that's still, of the utmost importance to recruit at a high level in high school, because you can't depend on the portal for everything. Like you can't go get a entire starting offensive line from the portal that's going to be, able to hold up in the SEC. You've got to, you still have to get the guys, like maybe it's like a 75-25 split, something like that. But it seems like, and signing day and games are a long time away, but Elko can recruit pretty well so far. I don't have the list in front of me, but he's landed some pretty highly rated kids so far. Gotten verbals from highly rated kids. Nothing's official till they sign, but you look around and he's getting visits from linebackers from California and Arizona. He's doing well with the offensive linemen in state. He's got a 5-star quarterback committed from California. That's a big piece. So it's still TBD on that front, but it's certainly encouraging.
Yeah, and I've always said, and this is not to diminish anything that this staff is doing right now, but if you're a half decent coach, a half decent recruiter, being at a place like A&M, it's not hard to recruit very well. That's why we saw Kevin Sumlin have so much success. That's why we saw Jimbo have so much success. And A&M's not unique to that. That's true of most major programs in the country. That when you have a healthy NIL program, you have all these facilities. You can sell the school, you can sell the SEC. There's so much that's appealing. That puts you kind of among that top tier in college football. That say if you're not recruiting well, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I think you and me could sign a top 15 class here.
Yeah. But I will say with Elko, just from what I've experienced, certainly anytime you bring in a new head coach, it always kind of feels like a breath of fresh air, just because you're not hearing the same platitudes that you've heard for however many years from the previous guy. But with Mike Elko, it does really feel like he does a very good job of, when he says something, whether it's in a press conference or otherwise, it actually sounds like you're getting his actual thoughts and like his real answer to that question. I feel like it's rare that he says something and you feel like he's holding something back or he's not telling you his real answer. And he's had questions in press conferences where it's kind of a question he doesn't really want to answer, and he'll just flat out say, "Yeah, I'm not going to answer that. You're not going to get me on that one."
Yeah.
So I feel like, and I think that probably translates to recruits as well, that, we all have just inherently as humans have a pretty good BS meter, and you can generally tell when someone's being straight with you versus when they're just trying to sell you down the river. And so I think it's maybe a very different approach than what Jimbo and the previous staff used, but I think it's something that you can appeal to people in different ways, and you just play to your strengths.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of folks thought coming in, or thought when he was hired, like, hey, we're probably going to get a better coach team, but he won't recruit as well, and we won't be as talented. It could work out to where you have both. And so far, I've been a big fan of pretty much all of the assistant hires. There's a couple that I don't know really anything about, but obviously Colin Klein looks to be a really promising hire. I think Jay Bateman knows his defense really well, and they're kind of on the same page there. So if we've had coaches come in and get the recruiting part right, at least from overall talent, maybe not the most balanced, but if Elko can somehow take that, improve upon it, also build the roster in the correct way, not neglect positions, and get the actual coaching part right, we could have something special here, So it's certainly promising.
And ultimately, as much as like we all love to talk about recruiting, and it is important in college football, it's still all about coaching and development, because if you're a good coach and you've got a good staff with a good scheme, you can overachieve relative to the talent that you have, which we haven't seen in quite a while. And not to mention, like, if you want to have any kind of sustainable recruiting presence, you have to win games. We saw that in our previous regime, where as much success as they had on the recruiting front, ultimately over the last 2-3 seasons, kids aren't gonna stick around, and they're not gonna stay committed if it looks like they're coming here to go 5-7 or 7-5.
Right.
And so winning cures all. And so as good a job as they're doing right now, if they can go out and win a bunch of games this fall, all of a sudden, that recruiting job gets way, way easier.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think to kind of tie that off, as far as his coaching prowess goes, one thing that we thought we were getting with Jimbo, and maybe we did when he first got here, was kind of the zero tolerance for nonsense or knuckleheads type of thing. Although I do remember Jimbo saying that he would hand the ball and throw the ball to a knucklehead, but he wouldn't snap it to one or something like that. Which he's I think he's done all of them.
Yeah.
But so far it seems, and not to point fingers here, but it seems like he's kind of holding true to that, at least so far. That hey, if you don't want to show up or come to practice or come to meetings or go to class and things like that, and that's probably more at some of the older like the holdovers from the Jimbo era, like guys that are still in classes here but in the portal, like didn't go through spring. I think you see that with that, and maybe it lasts, maybe it doesn't, but at this point we can say, hey, it doesn't seem like he's going to really tolerate kids skipping class or missing practice, falling asleep in meetings, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And, there was something he said, it wasn't in his introductory press conference, but it was there shortly thereafter. And he said it vaguely, but you could tell it was maybe a reference to some of the kids, either entering the portal or, recruiting, whatever. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, but he essentially talked about how he said, there are things that you can do in the first few months that can really like mess up your culture, mess up your progress for years.
Yeah.
And he kind of talked about, like chasing short-term results at the expense of like basically building the program the right way.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've seen that carry over, that he seems like he has a vision for what he wants the program to be, and he's not gonna like tolerate guys not living up to that. And I from what it sounds like we've had a few players enter the portal because of that. And as much as it hurts to lose talent, I think that's it serves the program in the long run. Not that those guys are gone, but just to hold everybody to that standard.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And because if you don't do that when you first get to a place, then you set the standard of, oh, like this isn't actually important. Like you can get away with doing whatever you want to or with certain things, and there's no consequence for it. So, um, I think most coaches would probably come in to a new job with a similar, style. But it is refreshing after after the past 2 years, after the highest rating signing class of all time, and all the, crap that went along with it.
Yeah.
It's refreshing. And also I've got a little subtangent here that I thought of the other day, but isn't it kind of nice that no one is talking about what's going on at A&M? Like it's kind of nice not being in every single headline every month.
Yeah, and what scares me though is inevitably because I feel like we were kind of in this place a year ago, like when we were coming off the 5-7 season, and then somehow like as the season got closer, all of a sudden everyone's like, "Well, watch out for A&M. I don't know, they could A&M could make noise this year. They've got a lot of talent still."
Right.
And I'm hoping we don't see that this year, because as much as me as an A&M fan, I can still see a lot of reasons why it's like, well, if this happens and if this guy works out and if this scheme is cranking, the way we think it should, then we could win a lot of games. Yeah, I don't want the outside noise of like keeping expectations on a team in year one of a new head coach.
Yeah.
As much as we may be optimistic, but we're fans. We're supposed to be foolishly optimistic. It would be nice to come into a season where, if you won 8 or 9 games, then you actually overachieved.
Right. Yeah, I feel like Jimbo's first season was like that because the year prior we weren't a very good football team, and Jimbo coming in had a lot of fanfare. But I remember like listening to my my typical college football podcast, and A&M didn't come up. They're like, we don't really know what to expect, so we're not going to really talk about it until we see them on the field. So hopefully there's kind of a similar mindset this offseason.
Yeah, and I swear to God, if they put us in a preseason top 25.
Well, on Monday, I refreshed my podcast feed, and I'm a big fan of the Cover 3 podcast. But the very first word was Arch Manning, and I was like, that's okay with me.
Yeah.
You don't need to talk about us. You don't even need to watch our spring game. Just wait till September. That's all we need. But
Agreed.
in terms of the actual football stuff, this is what I'm most excited to talk about is, and caveat, spring games don't mean everything, but we do get a look at some of these guys that, hell, we have 30 some odd new players on the team that, we haven't ever seen in an A&M uniform, and got to see something out of them, something tangible. So let's start with the positive, and maybe probably every Aggie's favorite position group at this point on is the defensive line. I knew Nick Scorton was good, and he was really good. We did a whole film thing on him on Good Bull Hunting.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this kid's impressive. Looked better, even better than that in the spring game. And not just like, oh, he got a bunch of sacks or tackles for loss, but just the way he moves and the way he plays. It feels like he's moving a lot quicker than everybody else. And maybe he was just playing with a ton of effort for, like more than everyone. Like maybe everyone else was like, hey, this is a spring game, we're not going to go that hard. And he was like, no, forget that. Like I'm going balls to the wall. And,
well, but it kind of tracks because I know Connor Wigman did an interview with Texags here just a week or two ago. And I'm not like reviewing paywalled content. This was on the
free.
Yeah, free on YouTube. But he pretty much said, he was like, yeah, it's like they've got two guys in Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart that it's like they can't keep him out of my face at practice every day.
Yeah.
And he went as far as say it's like those are two like future first round picks. And watching the spring game, that's what they looked like. So
yeah, and it was funny that Trey Zune had the first pick in the spring game draft, and he took Scorton so he didn't have to block it.
Yeah, smart man.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna get that guy on my team. But no, as impressive as he was, I thought Stewart was equally as impressive, and he's one of the. Is he the only? Well, I guess him and Gabe Dendy are the two 5-star D linemen left from the 2022 class.
Yeah. They're the only 5-star ones left. You still have like Malik Silla, Eni White. You have a few other linemen from that class, but yeah, they're the two remaining 5 stars.
But I guess we have 4 because it was those two and then Walter and Overton who were both gone.
Yeah, and Anthony Lucas.
That's right. Yeah. But like Stewart has always had, I think he was a top 10 player in the class. Like he was super talented. It's not hard to look at him and say, hey, this is probably a pretty good football player. And he's had flashes, but on Saturday, in this hour and a half instance that we got to watch, it was pretty consistent. Like he was consistently, coming off the ball quickly, disrupting stuff in the backfield and playing with a lot of effort. And didn't seem like he really took any plays off. And he was just constantly, and he was going to get up against the starters on the O-line.
Yeah.
Or most of the starters. And he was just terrorizing them and on both ends of the line of scrimmage. So I'm curious with the emergence of those two guys, what they ultimately do with Shamar Turner. Because he has kind of bounced back and forth between defensive tackle and defensive end. I thought he played pretty well as an end last year, but and you could keep him there conceivably. That would be fine. But if you want to get them all on the field at the same time, a starting 4 of Scorton, Turner, Stewart, and Regis or Hicks or somebody, that's a pretty fearsome front 4.
Yeah, no, that would be super salty, and I don't think we don't have the depth that we had there for a few years at that spot.
Right.
But that front 4 and even the guys, I think the guys behind them are still very serviceable, very talented players. But yeah, it might be most talented just starting 4 we've had on the D line in quite a while, to be honest. I'm trying to think back what would be a specific one to compare it to. But
in 2021, they were really good. So that was like Jaden Peavy, DeMarvin Leal, Michael Clemens.
That's
And
true. That was a good one.
And the year before they had those four and Bobby Brown. But as far like as good as Clemens was, like his senior year, it feels like Scorton could be the best like defensive end that we've had in a long time, like that best like edge defender, get after the quarterback and pass rush type guy. He may be, the best one since maybe Myles Garrett that's been here. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, and more than anything, man, I'm just excited to potentially have a defense that can both stop the pass and stop the run in the same season.
Yeah, that would be nice because it's typically one or the other.
No, it has been. So, I mean, because last year, obviously, the secondary was atrocious, but they were one of the top run defenses in the country. And then just 1 year before that, it was literally the opposite, where they were the top passing defense in the country, but everyone just ran the ball all over us. So hopefully we can find that nice balance between the two.
Yeah. Well, and even when Elko was the coach, it seemed like on defense we were always really talented at defensive line, obviously, and pretty good at linebacker and even safety. But corners was kind of hit or miss. And Jalen Jones and Miles Jones had some moments, especially in 2020. Tyreek Chappelle, was a pretty fine player. But you look at some of the guys they brought in, and that's a spot where there is depth, at least on paper. You look
which is crazy to say. Like,
it
because
is
back in like December, like early December, we were like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, I've got a little depth chart thing on my on Google Sheets, and I was looking at it like around the Texas Bowl, and I'm like, we just don't have any guys. Like, there's just no number. Like, we have maybe 5 defensive backs total on the roster, and there's just no depth whatsoever. And now, like, there's competitions at corner. There's 3 or 4 safeties that they feel good about. Like, there's 2 or 3 guys that are vying for nickel, and this may be the best like coverage unit that we've had, from in the secondary in a long time, and they seem like a pretty physical group too.
Yeah. And heck, like, I think if anything, what speaks to how much that group has improved was you go back to like when Jimbo was fired, Elko was first hired, and talking about the recruitment of Terry Bussey. And we were all talking about like, oh, well, like we've got to keep this guy because we need a starting cornerback for next year.
Yeah.
Whereas now all of a sudden the conversation has shifted more to like, well, maybe he plays wide receiver for a year. And then it was like switch back over later because I think like there's like legit competition there where, I mean, maybe he can still come in and maybe he's just that dude.
Yeah.
But you feel like all of a sudden cornerback's a position where, yeah, you have Tyreek Chappelle, you have I'm blanking on his name now, Trey Jones.
Trey Jones.
I mean, Des Ricks, who we didn't even see in the spring.
Yeah, we didn't see him. I thought Donovan Saunders and BJ Mays both played well.
Yep.
Man, I love me some Dalton Brooks. And he didn't make like a ton of plays, but the plays he made the other day were just like, it was pretty eye catching. And it's just nice to have options and think, oh, if so and so gets hurt, then we're doomed, But there's, and even the young guys, like I thought, Javon Thomas and Braven Rogers both, had some nice moments the other day. And Bryce Anderson, he's awesome. So, and in the words of Elko, he's a safety, and we're going to play him at safety.
I like how, he was very adamant about that. It almost like you definitely tell that he did not agree with the decision to, move him down to nickel last year.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited for a full season of Bryce at free safety. A position where I thought, I don't know if underwhelming is the right word, but I was hoping to see a little bit more disruption was at defensive tackle. And Turner's out and was out this spring. Gabe Dindy, who I think has the highest ceiling of any of them on the interior. I think he missed the majority, if not all, of spring practice.
Yeah.
but you still got guys like Albert Regis. We've seen him in games. I think he's a terrific player. It's good to still have him around. But David Hicks, Samu, I thought Rodas Johnson did some nice things, the Wisconsin transfer. But I don't know. After so many years of having just so many guys at that position, I just feel like we're missing maybe one more guy that would maybe feel like a little bit better about the depth there. But if Turner's a full-time tackle, then maybe that remedies that. But I'm curious if they go that direction and look for one more guy in the portal.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Yeah, because I agree. It's like we don't have nearly as many just rock stars at that position as we've had in recent years. So
yeah,
I think they could certainly deal with getting one more difference maker there.
Yeah, or if you just get if Brownlow Dindy is healthy for a full season and plays up to what he can do, maybe that's the fix right there. But
that's true. But that's always a hard thing about the spring game though, and it was especially true for A&M that while you can look at individual players and say, oh, this guy made some great plays and whatnot, it's hard to take a lot of big team wide takeaways. I mean, it's hard in any spring game, but especially with the way that A&M did it, where you didn't have first team offense versus first team defense going up against each other. It was just this mismatch of guys taken in essentially a fantasy draft, which is frustrating as fans because we want to see first team O, first team D, and kind of we want to see something. But at the same time, I also get that look, I'm sure Michael Elko also knows this is the last time that Notre Dame is going to see us on film before we play them.
Right.
And so it's why would you let them see your entire first team defense or first team offense?
Yeah.
It's probably the reason that Lane Kiffin did a hot dog eating contest and whatever else they did over there.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're in a similar position. Obviously, he's been there for a little while now, but they have a ton of new players, new receivers and defensive linemen and things. Maybe they don't want to tip their hand on what they're going to do and who they're going to roll out there. But I do want to stop for a second and say, as high as I am on the secondary and as optimistic as I am, they could go out there and get cooked by Notre Dame for all I know.
Oh yeah.
But it just seems a little more encouraging than in years past. I mean, even last fall, we were we don't really know who our starting corners are. We may have to, start a true freshman or, a couple guys got hurt and, it just wasn't a great year for that position. So I think it'll be vastly improved this year.
Yeah. And if nothing else, part of the positive of having a game like that right off the bat is you don't get those false hopes. If you start your season and get with 2 or 3 cupcakes that you just obliterate, you can talk yourself into your team being pretty good before you actually play anyone worth a darn.
Yeah.
So getting that game right off the bat, like you said, if we just get obliterated in that game, then right away you say, okay, well, it's dial back expectations accordingly. It's year one, we'll be fine.
Yeah, I guess we're going to be 11-1 and not 12-0.
Right. Yeah. But the danger of that also is you get 2014 South Carolina syndrome, where if we do go out and we do win that game, especially with it being the first game of a new head coach, I know all of us are just going to take our optimism just all the way to 11. That there's going to be no more reasonable skepticism anymore.
Yeah. In 2016, there was a team from the state of Texas that played Notre Dame at home in the first game that everybody watched and got excited about. And it didn't go well for them.
Yeah. Don't think I don't already have a tweet in my draft referencing that exact thing.
Oh, man.
Do you want to touch on offense a little bit? We haven't really talked much about that yet.
Yeah. Last thing I was going to say, linebacker, Torian York. He's a captain. He's your starting middle linebacker. He's going to be, great for us. I thought a couple other guys, showed some things. I thought Damian Sanford made a couple nice plays. Scooby Williams, had a couple plays here and there. And they went out and got a guy in the portal that was a starter at Pitt in Solomon DeShields to probably come in and compete to play next to York. Excited about that. More competition, the better, I think. I don't think it's going to scare anybody else off. Like, I don't think Sanford or Williams are going to transfer now because we went and got somebody else. So I feel good about that room. Tristan Jernigan, I think he may be a player too. But on offense, what stood out the most in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing was the offensive line still did not look great. Now, as we kind of talked about, you can make a lot of excuses for that, whether it's that, you don't have like guys playing as a cohesive unit with like guys they played with all spring, and also just that A&M defensive line maybe just being really, 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 really good.
Right.
And so it's going to make it hard for any offensive line to look good against that. But as a fan of A&M who has seen our offensive line struggle for the past 3 years, essentially, it's hard to not see that and at least be a little bit cautious.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of those that until you see that has been remedied, it's going to be the first thing that we all pay attention to.
Yeah, and of all the things we talked about over the past 2 or 3 years, if it's the scheme or Jimbo's culture or, the talent or whatever, maybe the biggest issue was the offensive line, at least when it came to on the field. And we had 3 years in a row where our pressure rate allowed was in the 40s, like bottom 10 of the country 3 years in a row. It's horrible. If they can just get to the median or the middle of that, just be an average offensive line.
Yeah.
This team can go win 9 or 10 games. If they're back in that range, then maybe not. But I do like. I think Cushing is a pretty substantial upgrade in terms of an O-line coach. I thought you even saw some subtle differences of just knowing who to block and not leaving guys wide open or like
weird.
Yeah.
No, I do agree there, and that was something I noticed, that because last year especially, like, it wasn't just that our guys got beat; it was that you just had free rushers who were unaccounted for, and I do feel like you saw a lot less of that. Now that you saw guys that just got beat one-on-one because they're going up against someone who's really, really good.
Right.
But yeah, it's like everything gets a lot easier if you're at least getting a hat on a hat every play.
Yeah. Yeah, and at least the 3 of the tackles that are in the competition to start with, Zune, Fothery, and Crownover, for the most part they held their own against the better edge rushers. Now Stewart and Scorton definitely won some reps against them. There's no doubt, but they weren't at least weren't getting beat like immediately off the snap, over and over. So if you can keep those 2 guys at bay from time to time, you should be able to manage in this conference. So, but there's a couple of guys that I thought really put a good foot forward on the O-line. I think Chase Basantis moving inside was a great move for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he was a top 100 kid, extremely strong, and looked great on his high school tape, obviously. But at right tackle last year, just felt a little bit, not super confident in maybe what he was asked to do, and being out there against, a bunch of grown men as an 18-year-old, and trying to pass block those guys. It didn't always go well, but I think he's probably a more natural fit on the interior. I thought he may have played the best out of any of them on Saturday. So I think he's going to be hard to unseat at left guard. And a guy we haven't seen in a while was Ruben Fothery, and he was good. He was really the only person that was able to slow Scorton down on the white team. So, I think we didn't really. I mean, he was definitely injured last year. I think it was a knee. I don't really remember, but I think that pretty much held him out all of last season. Like he didn't get a lot of reps or anything. So
Yeah, and that was one of those last year. It was always kind of veiled in mystery because it sounded like that, it happened in the off season, and it was like, oh well, he's going to be good to go for fall camp. And then fall camp started, he wasn't practicing. I was like, oh, but he'll be good for week one. And then week one he wasn't there, and then it just kind of kept going and going and going. And all of a sudden you're just like, I don't know when we're ever gonna see this guy.
yeah. And then he played guard in the bowl game. I'm like,
Yeah.
is he? Just a very weird situation last year with him.
Well, everything about last year was just so weird. About the last month of the season was just a blur.
Yeah, but I thought that was encouraging to see him out there and kind of looking like his old self.
Yeah.
And then I like the Kansas transfer. Is it Amarje or Armage?
Is it or Armage? I don't know.
Yeah, he was in at right guard on the white team, and the kind of trio of they had Shanahan at center, him at right guard, Fatheree at right tackle. They held up for the most part throughout the game, and did some nice things. So I think when Cam Dewberry gets back in the fall or this summer, him and Reed Adams will probably compete for the right side. Maybe Mark Naboo if they're bringing in a transfer center from Utah. I thought Naboo was pretty good at center. That'll be a nice competition. Always good to have options at center, and you don't want to get in a bad spot there. So maybe the most encouraging thing from the offense and the offensive line was the running game.
Yeah.
I'm having flashbacks of Auburn and Tennessee last year of just not being able to get a yard or any sort of running game going. And it seemed like I had hopes last season that they would run some more like kind of pin and pull and pull some linemen and do some more creative things. And they really never did it last year. They did it a lot on Saturday and to great success. All of the backs, EJ Smith had some nice pickups. Moss looks like he's ready to kind of be a SEC starter, and Ruben Owens. And Ruben actually broke some tackles, and took one to the house. And I think it's a pretty good it's pretty good, room there. But Moss, man, he may be what we've been thinking he was going to be all this time.
No, I agree. He stood out to me maybe more than anybody in that spring game. That he looked like an SEC running back. And I don't just mean like in build, but just the way he ran, breaking tackles, running physically. I was super duper impressed, and I do think that's something that, as much as you try not to take too much from spring games, looking at Colin Klein's offense back at Kansas State, one of the hallmarks of it was the creativity in the run game. So I definitely think that's something we can project forward and expect to see a ton of this fall, whether it's like pulling linemen or motion or two tight ends or the pin and pull, QB power or whatever.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot more variation in that, and ultimately, it's all just about like creating confusion and creating space for your guys, because the defenders thought they were going to be over here, and then you've got three blockers running to the left side instead.
Yeah. Well, and I obviously haven't tracked the stats of the spring game and play call percentages and whatnot, but it seemed like on nearly every pass play there's some kind of play action with it. There's always that threat of oh, we're gonna run it, oh, we're gonna roll out and throw it. But it felt like it was a constant thing on Saturday of just not just running the ball with success, but also using that to your advantage in the pass game.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was, I don't remember if it was Wigman or it was someone else on the team. They got asked about the offense, and one of the things they talked about was they said they're well, it's it's in a lot of ways it's very simple, but they said it's you'll be in a formation, but you'll run 6 different plays out of that same formation.
Right.
And so it's one of those where it makes it very simple on the offensive side, but it makes it a lot harder to predict on the defensive side because of the variation as far as just seeing what formation they line up in essentially tells you absolutely nothing.
Yeah. My Jimbo brain of 6 years can't even comprehend what you just said. Like,
Well, hey, but
or-
remember, according to Joe, everyone runs the same stuff.
yeah, a dig is a dig.
Uh,
Oh man, I try not to take this show that direction, but there's some that are just they're just layups, and I can't help but take them.
yeah.
But no, I mean, uh, I think the hire of Colin Klein is very exciting, and everyone's gonna talk about, me included, like, hey, look what he did with K-State talent and that sort of thing. But um, there's something to that. I think you like.
Oh yeah.
I get. I actually get pissed off thinking about how A-Chain would have looked in a Colin Klein offense.
Oof, man.
And instead of like in the same year, Deuce Vaughn had like 1,000,000 yards, and I'm like, man, A-Chain may have won a Heisman if Colin Klein was his coach.
I was like, it's funny because now, like, after what A-Chain did in the NFL, I know this is kind of a tangent, but there are so many people like that saw what he did in the NFL, and they were like, they were wondering, they're like, how did A&M like not utilize him more? But the thing that I said was like, I was like amazed because I'm not an NFL scout by any means, or even anywhere close to that. I'm not even like a good amateur scout. But I always said, like, I don't know who couldn't look at what A-Chain did at A&M and not like say this guy's going to be spectacular.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, don't look at production, like watch his film and just be like, this kid is like blazing fast, runs between the tackles, like is an instinctive runner. Like, so everyone was surprised when he jumped off the page, and I was like, I don't know how more people didn't expect him to do this.
Yeah. I mean, you go look at the last game he played when we played LSU, and
Yeah.
he pretty much like put the team on his back. I think Connor threw the ball 18 times in that game, and we just ran it and pulled off the upset. But
Yeah.
So we like the run game. We like the backs. There's some murmurs that they may add another one. Colorado transfer Dylan. Is it Dylan Edwards?
Yeah, I think so.
Is in the portal. He's been linked to A&M through some multiple outlets. He's a different kind of guy than what they have right now. He's about 5'9", 175, 180.
Yeah.
So a smaller guy, maybe third down back, change of pace guy, maybe even more in the passing game than some of the other guys. But I think going into a season with 4 scholarship backs, it makes me a little bit nervous. You'd kind of like a fifth one, but we'll see what they decide to do there. But in the passing game, let's start with tight end, because I was really excited about the addition of Trey Watson, and he practiced a bunch throughout the spring and then kind of got dinged up at the end and did participate in the game. But if I had to put money on who takes the first snap as a starter at tight end, I'd probably put it on him. What's your take? Like, and they took another one in the transfer portal the other day.
Yeah.
So,
Which,
I guess like what do you make of all that?
Yeah, adding Calhoun from East Carolina really caught me off guard. Yeah, because we had already added Trey Watson and Garrett Miller via the transfer portal back in December, January, and that's on top of Theo Armstrong, Jaden Platt, and Donovan Green still rehabbing from an injury. But but you now have 6 tight ends, which, I mean, I guess Colin Klein likes to use those tight ends, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting take. But I think it seems like that's something that we should be expecting, though, is like for those guys to be really highly utilized, both in the passing game and as far as in the blocking scheme.
Yeah, and they the best they could, they ran some 2 tight end stuff on in the spring game, and there's some walk-ons in there. I think I even saw the fullback. Is it Jerry Johnson?
Yeah.
Kid from Rice. He played some tight end, so I mean, I don't think we saw him at all last year. So that could be something that you might see. But I thought Orstrom, being from Sweden and not from America and growing up playing football. That had to have been, a crazy learning curve, but he looks like a football player now. Like
Yeah.
I thought he blocked pretty well. His routes are good. He's obviously a massive human being and extremely athletic. So I'm sure they're excited about him. Jaden Platt, I think he's a pretty high ceiling guy. It sucks that Green had that injury in fall camp, because I feel like that's so hard to come back from, even in a year's time, to get back and be fully healthy. So hopefully he can get back, up to speed pretty quick, because he, certainly has a promising career ahead of him. But in terms of the quarterbacks and the receivers, I think if there's a position that, is out there still as kind of a must have in the transfer portal, it probably is receiver. I think it sounds like they were really excited about Jabray Barber, and then he broke a foot, and now that's, may have a longer time to heal than they would hope. So, but I guess like what's your kind of take on? I feel like that's kind of the worst thing to try to gauge in, especially a spring game like we played with the mix and match rosters. The quarterbacks and the receivers, and just kind of the passing game overall.
Yeah, it was hard to get a read on it because the pass rush was so effective.
Yeah.
That you're rotating quarterbacks. It's like nothing about that game is like designed to really get a good game flow and get a good feel for it. I do think it's hard to walk away from that game and the big pass away from the receiving core not be Noah Thomas. I feel like he kind of just picked up where he left off, towards the beginning of last year, where he just looked like a guy who, could get open, has that huge catch radius, and it's like, and made some really difficult catches, whether it's like going up and catching one over the top, or that second touchdown where it's literally a diving catch, going towards the corner. I mean, he flashed that skill set that he could be potentially your number one receiver. Now it's like I do think A&M has a lot of other options there. Obviously, you bring Moose Muhammad back. You got Cyrus Allen, who we got from Louisiana Tech, and I feel like there's someone else. Walker, yeah, Jade Walker, who also had some pretty awesome plays, and I've been a huge fan of him. Like, really, ever since we got him out of the portal, I remember watching his highlights and just being like, this guy can play.
And he was a summer guy, wasn't like he didn't go through spring ball last year, so this is his first spring with A&M.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
So he's another one. Like, we've got some playmakers there. The problem is, I think you get beyond that starting 4 or 5, and it does get dicey. I'll throw Micah Tees in there as well. I know he's definitely a pretty skilled player, but A&M has room for adding more impact players, but also just needing, I think, more bodies, because you're not going to go through an entire season with everybody healthy. And so, you need other guys that can come in and make plays. So it sounds like, I know there was one guy that we lost to Auburn today. There's the Houston transfer Sam Brown that A&M's heavily courting right now. But as far as spring game is concerned, passing game wasn't that great. I think we'll all be fully transparent. But it's not something I'm like overly concerned about projecting into the fall. Could it project forward? Yeah. I mean, but I'm not setting off any alarm bells by any means.
Yeah. It's TBD. Like we don't know anything yet about it. So
yeah.
I do like the Houston kid, Sam Brown. I think he's like your prototypical kind of X receiver. I guess. Well, what's interesting is I think Carter Carl's pointed this out, but most of Noah's snaps came from the slot the other day.
I saw that.
you don't see a lot of 6'6" slots in football these days. But if that's where he's effective, then by all means, put him there and
let's do it.
like and put Cyrus Allen at the Z, or
Yeah.
whatever. But I thought Cyrus Allen did look he looked pretty good, made some nice plays. I'm with you on Walker. I think he's an incredible talent. And I'm not a football coach, obviously, and I don't coach for A&M, but in my simple little equation here, we are very deep at defensive back with talent and quantity and experience. We have 4 receivers that are healthy. If it were me, I would probably put 5-star athlete Terry Bussey on offense when he gets here, at least to start out. And honestly, the kid can do both. I'm not saying, hey, let's Travis Hunter him and make him play 100 snaps a game, but I think he could help you day one on offense.
Oh yeah, I mean, because he has difference making, like game breaking ability that it's like there may not be anyone else on the roster that can do exactly what he does. So I tend to agree. I think it's as much as long term he may project, as a corner, or maybe that's where A&M wants him. It's hard to not look at year one and say, but gosh, like there's a glaring need. And it's not like he's a guy that has only played corner. Like he in his high school career, he played corner, he played quarterback, and wide receiver. So he's kind of he's played a little bit of everywhere. So definitely has the skill set to do that.
Yeah. I want to say he played. I think he may have played both in the All-American game, but I do know he played some receiver, or at least he did receiver drills that week.
Mm-hmm.
But and was impressive. So that's what I would do. The coaches, they're much smarter than us. They'll figure it out. But
right.
you get Sam Brown, you put Terry Bussey on offense. Isaiah Williams, I think they're high on him.
Yeah.
I knew there was one more that I forgot about. It was Ashton Bethel Roman. We also signed him. So
there we go. Yeah.
May not make an impact right away, but definitely a talented player as well. So
yeah, there's also and I didn't know about this till today. There's a former Auburn wide receiver that we're in he went back in the portal in December. Apparently hasn't committed yet. But we're like in his top 4. I don't think that's like necessarily a big like difference maker, but certainly could be, just another piece to build out the depth of that team if we can get him on board.
Yeah. I mean, if not, we may be using all these 6 tight ends that we have.
Yeah.
Lastly, quarterbacks. Obviously, I think Wigman's your guy. We know what he can do, what he's capable of, and from his own words, not fully healthy yet, not 100%. I think Elko said the same. So, hopefully over the summer and through fall camp, can kind of get back to where he was health wise. But I've got to say, man, I'm a big fan of Marcel Reed.
Yeah,
not just the ball game, but even in the spring game the other day, he made some nice throws, and he's just kind of a fun player to watch, man. I'm glad we got him.
Yeah, he just seems like just a really natural playmaker. Whether it's like with his legs or with his arm, like very, very talented. He's got a surprisingly strong arm, and is really mobile and made a lot of things happen in the bowl game. Made a lot of things happen in the spring game. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being your number 2 QB this fall.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all.
I mean, as much as I think, Jalen Henderson, I think we'll all forever love that guy because he came in such a seemingly impossible position last season and played, some really good football. And my gosh, if he's your number 3, like, what a fortunate situation to be in.
Yeah, I think I made this point after the Texas Bowl because we were all just kind of shocked at how well Marcel Reed played. But I was like, how does A&M have 4 quarterbacks, at that point that were capable of playing a game and, doing at least being serviceable. And Florida State had one. Like their second and third guys were just, as bad as you'll see. And it was just kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And and let's not forget with Marcel Reed, he, we just added him to the class, here just like 16 months ago. He was a last minute flip from Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So like we may be looking at this a couple years down the road and thanking our lucky stars that guy's in College Station and not playing in Oxford.
Yeah. Because who did they have committed in 23? Was it Holstein?
But yeah, it was Holstein originally, and then they went like 6 months without a QB commit.
Yeah.
And they added Marcel Reed, like I think it was like early December. It was a pretty late flip.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and like you said with Wegman, I think part of it is A, like he wasn't fully healthy, but B also, he was on the team that Torian York drafted, and York, let's be honest, did not do him any favors. He didn't give him many starting O linemen. He didn't give him any of the starting wide receivers.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean he was kind of set up for failure on that one.
I would like to see the draft like pick by pick and be like, okay, Torian, like what were you thinking when these guys were still there? But I mean, like the defense was good on the white team, but yeah, you stuck Connor with one scholarship receiver and the second string O line.
Yeah,
and you had to go against Scorton, so that wasn't too fun.
Like, yeah, I really did. When I first looked at the rosters, I was like, I think Torian York might have picked like Connor Wigman number 1, and then just said like, and then I'm gonna get my defense.
Yeah, yeah. I think I did hear maybe on the radio or on Texas radio or something else that Scorton was the first pick and DJ Hicks was the second pick. York picked him to be like, he's like, hey, like you're gonna keep me clean and. So I can make some plays, but
yeah.
Either way, the point stands. I think Trey Zoom may be a NFL GM, eventually with how he drafted.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. We've got 72 listeners, which I think it's some kind of record to have that number for this one. It's been high the whole time, but it's the fact that it's stayed this high has been cool. Y'all ask some questions or something or tweet at us or whatever, but I think we're probably gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But I guess as we enter the off season, safe to say that receiver is kind of our biggest kind of hang up right now in terms of trying to project out.
Yeah, I would say so. Like that maybe defensive tackle, but I mean, I feel like defensive tackle, that's like every program in the country right now is trying to find interior linemen.
It's a luxury.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that, we don't just have nobody. We've got several really, really good players there. Now it's like you'd like to have like 2 or 3 waves of them, but that's not always going to be feasible. But man, like more than anything, it's just, it's like, it's always exciting. Like every new season is exciting in and of itself, but especially with a new coaching staff, just it gives you more of that optimism that like all the crap that that went wrong, maybe actually might go right this time.
Yeah.
And so, as much as I know we're all probably trying to temper our expectations and trying to remind ourselves, like where this team was and everything. This is the time of year where you start talking yourself into things and do that slow build up to like mid-August when you've convinced yourself that we're going to shock the world and win the SEC.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're well on our way.
Yeah.
I think, I think for at least for me and for any team I root for, and especially for after the last couple of years of A&M, if we just see a team that cares, that plays with a lot of effort, that doesn't make stupid mistakes, a coaching staff that cares and all that sort of stuff. As long as they can just kind of reach their potential and not even win every game. Like you don't have to win every game to reach your potential, but like play to your ability. And I'm happy with that. That's why I love Aggie basketball so much. Like I expect nothing from Aggie basketball, but they play hard. They're pretty well coached. And more often than not, they're pretty fun to watch, and it's a team that you're proud to root for. So if I could feel that way about
And
my football team, then I'm in a good place.
and man, I tell you what, like if you look at what Mike Elko's teams looked like at Duke, like if we can look like that with the talent that A&M has, then there's no reason we shouldn't be excited.
Yeah, I mean he beat Clemson, like beat Clemson, not like squeaked by them.
Yeah, like it was a dominant win
at Duke, like a probably a bottom 10 job in the country.
I mean, I still think like if Leonard doesn't get hurt, they probably win 9 games again.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were still competitive even after that. Like they, went down to the wire. I think they maybe went to overtime with North Carolina, and still did well by Duke standards, certainly.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll tell you what, like if I have one wish for this season, it's that we don't have a single season-ending injury to a quarterback.
Yeah, how long has that been? Well, I guess since Kellen,
since like Kellen Mond was like the Terminator, like never missed a game
Iron
for
Man.
anything. Yeah.
That is pretty shocking to look back at. Like I'd like to see the stats on quarterbacks that played as many snaps as he did and just was totally fine. Yeah, no, that'd be great if we could avoid that for 1 year. Anything else before we get out of here?
I don't think so, man. I think it was like you said, a lot of stuff's happened in the past 4 months, but we've got another like 4 months to go before we're actually watching real football again. But we're going to be getting into here in June. You'll have the really big like kind of camp and official visit season. So I think you'll see a lot more recruiting action then. And then we're going to start getting into SEC media days in July, and then before you know it, it's going to be fall camp. So as much as the off season can be super duper long sometimes, it's coming. We're going to get there.
Yeah. It also helps when your baseball team is freaking badass and
that too.
Just does nothing but hit home runs every game. So you have that to look forward to, Aggie fans.
So I'm super worried. I have a family vacation scheduled for the weekend of regionals, and then a guys golf trip that's scheduled for the weekend of supers. And that was remarkably bad planning on my part.
Yeah.
But I'm free the week of Omaha, so I'd really appreciate it if we could get there again this year.
Yeah, I bought I didn't pay for all these, but I helped my family. Like I got the pre-sale link for being a donor because I gave them $50 back in January. I bought 19 tickets to George Strait for my extended family, and maybe selling my ticket to go to Omaha because it's the same weekend. So I didn't think that through either. So, but if they're going, I'm going to be going. So, but it's a special team. It's been incredibly fun to follow. So
yeah, it's maybe the first time I've thought this about an A&M team in quite a while, and it's like I just hope beyond hope that they actually do live up to that expectation. And it's almost scary because you watch this team and you say, like, this actually is a team that is capable of winning a national title.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But it also is a little scary because you say, yeah, but now we have to go do it, which is super hard because how many teams you saw Tennessee 2 years ago?
Oh yeah,
where they're just like one of the most dominant baseball teams you've ever seen throughout the entire regular season, and then done.
Like until LSU won it last year, there was like some crazy streak about the number one overall team like not winning it. So maybe we falter down the stretch and let Arkansas be number one, and then we
right. Just be a solid number 2 seed.
Yeah. But no, I'm with you. Like of all the Aggie teams that I've watched, this is the one where I'm like, okay, these guys are that good, and they can definitely
go pull it off. It's not just the if we get hot or if we get a few breaks or whatever. It's like no, it's like if we're playing our best ball and everyone else is playing our best ball, I think we could do it.
Yeah,
which is crazy to say.
Because that's how 2022 was. I'm like, hey, this is not the most talented team in the country, obviously, but they were hot at the right time, and I'm like, hey, maybe they could. I didn't expect
Yeah.
it, but it was certainly possible. But with this team, yeah, it's become the expectation. But no, it's been so much fun to follow. I'm excited to keep watching them and see what they do. But like you said, yeah, it seems like a long way away, but I mean, the draft is this week, and then it's there's still baseball, there's recruiting visits, there's media days. That it's gonna get here before we know it, and then fall camp's gonna start. We're gonna get on here and predict to go 15-0 or whatever it is now that you would go with all the 12-team playoff, 17-0, whatever it is. We're gonna predict that in August, so it's gonna be a good time. So
Yeah.
But thanks for hopping back on. I'm sure we'll get back on here, over the next throughout the off season and talk about some Aggie football. But appreciate you guys. Like seriously, appreciate you guys listening for this entirety of the show. Follow us on Twitter and and subscribe to YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.